House of the Dragon Season 3 has officially come to an end. And if you thought the Dance of Dragons couldn't get any darker, this finale proved otherwise. The Season 3 finale gave us the Battle of Tumbleton, shocking deaths, betrayals, the return of Aegon, Rhaenyra's increasingly ruthless transformation, and one heartbreaking death that could completely change the final chapter of this war. And yes, House of the Dragon will return for Season 4. But here's the important part. Season 4 will be the final season of the series, and right now, the expected release window is 2028. So, if you're ready, let's break down exactly what happened in the Season 3 finale, why these moments matter, and what we should expect when House of the Dragon returns. And don't forget to subscribe because we're breaking down the biggest moments, endings, theories, and future stories from your favorite shows. Season 3 Finale Recap. The Season 3 finale wastes very little time, reminding us that this war has moved beyond political arguments. This is no longer simply Rhaenyra versus Aegon. It has become a brutal struggle where entire armies, families, and innocent people are being sacrificed for the Iron Throne. And that becomes painfully clear at Tumbleton. The Battle of Tumbleton is the centerpiece of the finale, with Daemon leading the Black forces against a Hightower army commanded by Ormond Hightower. And this is easily one of the biggest action sequences House of the Dragon has delivered so far. The battle is chaotic, destructive, and deliberately ugly. There is no clean victory. There is no heroic side walking away untouched. Instead, we see exactly what a Targaryen civil war looks like when dragons are turned into weapons. Ormond Hightower uses civilians as human shields, making the battle even more horrifying. And then everything becomes completely unpredictable when Ulf the White turns against the Greens. Ulf's betrayal is one of the finale's biggest moments because he doesn't simply switch sides quietly. His dragon becomes a weapon of mass destruction, creating chaos across the battlefield and killing major figures, including Ormond Hightower. The battle also claims the life of Roderick Dustin, another major loss for Daemon's forces. And that is important because the finale isn't interested in giving either side a comfortable victory. Tumbleton is technically a major military confrontation, but emotionally, it feels like another reminder that everyone is losing something. Rhaenyra's transformation, but while the battlefield is exploding, something arguably more important is happening with Rhaenyra. Rhaenyra is changing, and honestly, this may be one of the most interesting parts of the entire finale. Earlier in the series, we've seen Rhaenyra desperately try to avoid unnecessary bloodshed. She wanted the throne, but she also wanted to preserve the realm. Now, she's becoming much more willing to use fear and violence. The news that Aegon is alive and has returned becomes a psychological breaking point for her. Rhaenyra had spent so much time believing that removing Aegon would solve the problem. But Aegon surviving means the threat hasn't disappeared, and that pushes her further toward the ruthless queen we've been warned about. She becomes increasingly suspicious of those around her, including Corlys and Mysaria. Her decisions become colder. And this is where I think the show is doing something very smart. Instead of suddenly turning Rhaenyra into a villain, it is showing us how someone who believes she has a legitimate claim can slowly convince herself that almost any action is justified. That is much more frightening. Aegon's return. And then we have Aegon. After everything he's been through, Aegon is still alive, and his return completely changes the political equation. Aegon isn't simply a broken former king anymore. He's becoming a survivor. And that's important because Aegon's character has arguably had one of the most dramatic transformations in the entire series. At the beginning, he was reckless, immature, and completely unprepared for the responsibilities of kingship. Now he has been physically and psychologically destroyed by the war. But instead of disappearing from the story, he comes back, and his reunion with Aemond is particularly important. The two brothers have spent much of the story divided by resentment, ambition, and betrayal. Now they have a common enemy, Rhaenyra. That can make the Greens more dangerous than ever heading into the final season. Helena's death. But perhaps the most heartbreaking moment of the finale is Helaena. Helena's story has always been different from everyone else's. While almost everybody around her is obsessed with power, Helaena has been associated with visions, prophecy, and an almost unsettling awareness of what is coming. Her suffering has also been building throughout the series. After everything she has endured, Helaena ultimately dies by suicide, jumping from a castle window. And this isn't simply another shocking death. It represents the horrifying human cost of the war. Helaena never wanted to be part of this conflict. She wasn't obsessed with the throne. She didn't want to become a warrior, yet she became one of its greatest victims. Her death is devastating because she represents innocence in a world that has become completely consumed by violence. And her death also leaves Alicent facing an unimaginable loss. The woman who once believed she could protect her children through political power has now lost another piece of the family she was fighting to protect. Rhaenyra and the Iron Throne. Meanwhile, Rhaenyra continues to consolidate power. But here's the irony. The closer Rhaenyra gets to the throne, the more isolated she becomes. And that is one of the central themes of House of the Dragon. The Iron Throne doesn't simply give people power. It consumes them. Viserys lost himself trying to preserve his family. Alicent lost her friendship with Rhaenyra, trying to protect her children. Aegon lost almost everything trying to hold the crown. Aemon has become increasingly consumed by revenge. And now Rhaenyra is walking down the same road. The question isn't simply whether Rhaenyra will win. The question is, what will be left of Rhaenyra if she actually wins? And that, in my opinion, is what makes Season 4 so exciting. Why the Tumbleton battle matters. The Battle of Tumbleton is more than just an expensive dragon battle. It changes the balance of power. The Blacks have suffered devastating losses, but the Greens aren't exactly celebrating either. Ormond is dead. The battlefield is devastated. Ulf's betrayal demonstrates just how unreliable some of the new dragon riders can be. And the war has become so chaotic that nobody can completely control the dragons anymore. That is the terrifying thing about the Dance of the Dragons. The Targaryens believe their dragons give them control. But eventually, the dragons become the reason they lose control. And that is exactly what we're seeing. So, what does the finale mean? The biggest takeaway from the finale is simple. The war is nowhere near over. Season 3 doesn't give us a traditional victory. Instead, it positions both sides to the final confrontation. Aegon is alive. Aemon is still a major threat. Rhaenyra remains determined to hold the throne. Daemon and his forces are still active. Alicent has suffered another devastating personal loss. And the Targaryen family is more divided than ever. The final season, therefore, has an enormous amount of story to resolve. And that brings us to the question everybody is asking. Will there be a House of the Dragon Season 4? Yes, absolutely. HBO has confirmed that Season 4 is happening, and it will be the final season of House of the Dragon. Showrunner Ryan Condal has confirmed that the fourth season will consist of 8 episodes and will bring the Dance of the Dragon story to its conclusion. So there is no question about whether the show has been renewed. It has. The real question is when we're going to see it. House of the Dragon Season 4 release date. And this is where fans are going to need patience. There's currently no exact premiere date for House of the Dragon Season 4. However, the expected release year is 2028. That means fans could potentially be waiting roughly 2 years after Season 3 finale. And honestly, that makes sense when you consider what HBO is asking production team to deliver. This show isn't producing simple television episodes. We're talking about dragons, huge battles, armies, visual effects, and some of the most complicated sequences in the entire franchise. Reports have also pointed to the enormous amount of visual effects work required for the series as one reason for the lengthy production schedule. So while 2028 sounds painful, I would rather wait for HBO to finish the story properly than rush Season 4 and damage the ending. My personal opinion. Personally, I think Season 3 was much more satisfying as a complete season than Season 2. One of the biggest complaints about Season 2 was that it felt like it was constantly preparing for a war, without fully delivering the scale of that war. Season 3 finally changes that. The battles matter. The characters are making irreversible decisions. The political situation is becoming increasingly unstable, and the consequences are finally catching up with everyone. But I also think the show has to be careful with Season 4. 8 episodes is not a lot of time to conclude a story this massive. The writers have to balance the battles with the character endings. Rhaenyra needs a proper conclusion. Aegon's story needs a conclusion. Daemon needs a conclusion. Aemon needs a conclusion. Alicent needs a conclusion. And the Dance of the Dragons itself needs to feel like it has reached its natural endpoint. If HBO tries to rush all of that into 8 episodes, fans would end up feeling that the finale was too compressed. But if they focus on the most important characters and emotional consequences, Season 4 could become one of the strongest final seasons in the Game of Thrones universe. Ending. And that's where we leave House of the Dragon Season 3. Tumbleton has burned. Helaena is gone. Aegon has returned. Rhaenyra is becoming increasingly ruthless. The Greens and Blacks are still locked in a war that has already destroyed an entire generation of Targaryens. And now we know that only one season remains. Season 4 will be the final chapter. There is currently no exact release date, but the expected window is 2028. And if Season 3 has shown us anything, it's that the final battle for the Iron Throne is not going to be pretty. In fact, I think the real question heading into Season 4 isn't who will win, it's, will there be anything left of House Targaryen when the war finally ends? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Was the Season 3 finale everything you expected? Did Helena's death surprise you? And most importantly, are you excited for the final season in 2028? Subscribe for more House of the Dragon and Game of Thrones analysis, endings, theories, and breaking entertainment news.